spring has sprung and the madness is marching. The NCAA tournament is finally here.
With Temple well into its offseason, we're moving focus over to the national scene. We're taking a look at the movers and shakers in the fields of 64.
I'm Tamar Stubbs, live at the studio set. Later in the show, I'll talk about some standout performances from the men's tournament, as well as putting a magnifying glass on my tournament bracket.
And I'm Haley Smith. I'll be highlighting a few standout players in the women's tournament and taking a look at how my bracket is shaping up. Courts in Session Pulse Check Edition is live and starts now.
Hello and welcome into TV Studio 3 for a special edition of Courts in Session Pulse Check. Just because the Temple basketball seasons have come to an end does not mean that our crew stops working.
In honor of the NCAA tournament, our crew decided to turn everyone's favorite segment into a full show. We swapped out the cherry and the white for our heart rate monitors. Why? Because it's time to check that pulse.
Over the next 30 minutes, we'll give you everything you need to know about college basketball in both NCAA brackets. And starting with some of the most recent news out of the round of 32 from the men's side, Pat, Texas being the lowest seed. They beat Gonzaga in the round of 32. Jordan Pope with 17 points. There was the 11-2 difference in points off turnovers, and I think that was really the big difference in that Texas game there.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird discourse going around about Texas saying that they're a Cinderella story. They're an 11 seed that barely snuck into the NCAA tournament, and only because they didn't perform up to preseason expectations throughout the regular season. It's the fourth highest spending basketball department in America, just in terms of what is poured into travel, recruiting, nutrition, things like that, their facility. Not in terms of roster, obviously. No. Those numbers are not readily available to us. But this is not a Cinderella. It's the University of Texas. When they're in postseason tournaments, they're supposed to succeed.
Right.
Now, excellent win over Gonzaga.
You're playing
excellent
a 3-seed Gonzaga,
right.
Mark Few.
Excellent win. I'm not taking that away from them. But they're supposed to be doing this.
They're supposed to be doing this, Mark Few. But we have Matas Volkaitis, absolutely electric game out of that guy. 17 points from the big guy. We're really seeing Texas really form into their own. But another team we're seeing form into their own is Iowa in the huge upset that they had over Florida. The number 9 seed Iowa takes down the number 1 seed Florida. Bennett Sturts had 13 points. Tavion Banks with 20 points from Iowa. Pat, the huge upset.
Yeah, I had Florida losing in the next round in my first bracket that I made just right on Selection Sunday.
Most people had them not losing at all.
I had them losing the Sweet 16, but a lot of people didn't have them losing at all. Some of our colleagues here at Dallas Sports Update, I won't name names. We'll keep things anonymous out here. For now. But Ben McCollum, one of the great winners in college sports. He was at D2 Northwest Missouri State just 2 years ago. Was at Drake last year. They beat Missouri in the NCAA tournament, advanced to the round of 32, and they do it again this year against a Florida team that was red hot, the hottest team in college basketball heading into that game. Outside of the loss to Vanderbilt, they were tremendous. And that, I'll tell you what, we'll get to them in a second. But Vanderbilt, incredible performance against Florida in the SEC tournament. They didn't get what they needed to from their guards. Boogie Flan and Xavier Lee kind of did a disappearing act, so unfortunate to see that.
Yeah, you mentioned two powerhouse teams. A huge powerhouse matchup with St. John's versus Kansas, and St. John's with the Dylan Darling buzzer beater ends up winning another sloppy game. Kansas had 16 turnovers to St. John's only 8.
Yeah, that's how St. John's like it. They like to speed things up, and they like to really force you to turn the ball over and make you uncomfortable. Now on to our next game. Tennessee, Rick Barnes, onto their third consecutive Sweet 16, looking to make it their third consecutive Elite Eight.
Yeah, Jacoby Gillespie had 21 points for Tennessee. They looked absolutely electric out there. They were the lower seed, again, a number 6, taking down the number 3 seed. Foul trouble really seemed to be the big play in this one here. Virginia had 19 fouls compared to Tennessee's only 14, and then Taj DeRitter only had 22 points. So, really shaky ball out of Virginia. We're seeing kind of sloppy ball.
One last topic we got here. You were screaming, crying, and throwing up when this happened. Nebraska, Sweet 16. I was right. Hashtag ABP was right. I was on them all year. really happy for that school, really happy for that athletic department. First 2 tournament wins ever. So just the fact that they were able to get 1, that's a big success for that school. But the fact that they were able to get 2, let's get greedy. Let's go to the Elite 8 in Nebraska.
Why not? But the madness is going to continue. We know that for a fact, and we are going to continue into a break, but stick with us.
When we return, we're seeing how the tournament made its way down to Philly, along with performance recaps from our beat reporters. A special edition of Courts in Session returns in 90.
Welcome back to our special edition of Courts in Session. This past weekend, the NCAA tournament made a stop right here in the city of brotherly love. 8 teams were sent to the Xfinity Mobile Arena with hopes of making a tournament run, and yours truly was there to take in all the action. It's the biggest tournament in basketball. 68 teams, all fighting for the same goal, to win the national title. So many teams are competing in so many different cities, and this year, one stop comes to Philadelphia at the Xfinity Mobile Arena for Friday and Sunday games this past weekend. The March Madness has officially made its way here down to South Philly. With teams like Miami, Ohio, and UConn getting ready to take the stage at the Xfinity Mobile Arena, we're seeing elite-level hoops, passionate fans, and what looks like a lot of refreshments here in one big parking lot.
Lot of red, lot of red. Oh, let's go, baby!
You know, it's pretty electric out here. Typical Philly crowd. Everyone's getting rowdy. You know, it's fun.
Tennessee really we're all here from Miami, Ohio. I can't believe that crowd came all the way out here, and we're ready to roll.
Tennessee, big time.
Tennessee Vols.
Go Vols. Go Big Orange.
Awesome. So do you guys come to Philly often, or is this a special occasion for March
Madness? First trip for me. 65 years old. I've been to Pennsylvania, never been to Philly.
Wow.
First time.
Wow. So how are you guys liking the environment so far?
It's been great so far.
I just got here last night. I'm still getting the feel for it, but,
Awesome.
but we've had some good Philly quesadillas.
There you go. A chance to compete in the madness doesn't come often for many of the teams in this year's tournament, which is why generations of fans are willing to support their schools when they do.
Southeastern Indiana and
Ohio. Gotcha. So we got people clearly coming all over to really watch their teams. And you guys, I take it, are supporting the Red Hawks today?
Yes.
We're both graduates.
We're alumni. I was born at Miami of Ohio.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
I went back in the early years.
I got you.
Early years.
The March Madness fever has seeped its way into so many corners of the nation. And this past weekend, Philly was happy to join the party.
Yeah, there was a lot of fun at Xfinity Mobile Arena this week, but we're going to recap the round of 64. Let's see that first game. There was not a lot of fun to be found. For our producer, Logan, he picked Wisconsin all the way to the Final Four. Logan, we love you. Please don't cut our mics. Not a great pick.
No, not a great pick. High Point takes on Wisconsin. Chase Johnson on the buzzer, on the go-ahead bucket. His first 2-point bucket of all year long was, of course, comes in March Madness, because why not in March Madness?
Yeah, an excellent performance by High Point defensively and offensively. Wisconsin, one of the better teams in the country and not turning the ball over, and High Point just won the turnover battle.
Volume shooting out of High Point. Volume shooting. But on to the next game now. We have Duke playing Siena. Duke won against Siena against the Saints, but very narrowly. Siena was up by as much as 13 at one point in the game, and they led into the half. Jerry McNamara, he basically won himself a new job. He's the Syracuse new head coach. And John Shayer, after the game, said, he outcoached me, he outcoached us. And that's really rare for a number 1 seed Duke to be saying about a 16 seed Siena path.
Yeah, there was only 7 players, my apologies, available for Siena for that game. Only 5 of them played. They had 5 players injured for that game. They went toe-to-toe with the National Player of the Year in Cam Boozer. On to our next game. It's Kentucky and Santa Clara. Fireworks. This is why we watched this event. What an end to this game. Otega Oweh, 35 points, and one of the better sequences that's ever happened in the history of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, no, that game was absolutely electric. Santa Clara and Kentucky, they went head-to-head. Herb Sendick, I was really impressed with the coaching. We all know he's going to be a good, consistent coach for Santa Clara.
Was in the running for the Providence College job.
He was against Brian Hodgson. But when you look at these coaches, you know these are great coaches, a great West Coast school, and they really go toe-to-toe with Kentucky. They forced Otega Oweh to hit that crazy sequencing, that crazy end of the game sequence. Otega Oweh hits the shot and wins it for Kentucky. Now moving on to VCU upsetting North Carolina, one of the biggest upsets in the 64 pack.
Yeah, we got to fire Herbert Davis, right? We got to fire Herbert Davis if you're North Carolina. That can't happen. A 17-point lead in the second half. inexcusable, excellent effort from VCU, but that genuinely can't
Way
happen
better
if you're
shit.
North Carolina.
VCU
You
shot
don't lose
42,
in the first round.
Yeah,
You're North
VCU
Carolina.
shot 42 to 28% from the three.
You know who does lose in the first round? It's USF, and I told
American.
everyone that Michael Brown had, Louisville had a higher net rating without Michael Brown, and they were better without Michael Brown. They play Louisville without Michael Brown, and I picked USF. I'm not very smart.
First Louisville win since Rick Pitino, and they were without one of their starting players. For the 5th straight game, Mikel Brown Jr. was out for Louisville, and yet they still get a win over South Florida, and they still destroy every hope we have at the American looking good. But now moving on over to Texas, making making AJ look horrible there for BYU. A projected top 3 pick now goes down in the first round, Pat.
Yeah, he still had an excellent game. The reason they lost wasn't because of BYU. It's the way their roster was built. Nothing good was coming with how they spent for that roster. And on to our final game, which was played right here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Jacoby Gillespie, Tennessee Volunteers. I'm pouring honey on you. A tremendous game against Miami of Ohio. But as they say in The Outsiders, nothing gold can stay, Pony Boys. Stay gold, Miami of Ohio. Their season's over.
Yeah, their season's over. The run is over. The magic in Miami is over. But hey, that's March.
Yeah, somehow after the round of 64, my bracket wasn't perfect. And someone that is always on the money, however, and is always perfect is our guy, Tamar Stubbs.
Tamar's at the studio set, and he's got a breakdown on some of the tough performances coming out of the tournament so far. Hey, Tamar.
Always on the money. That's high praise from dollar hand to dollar, man. The aura of the NCAA tournament, we have big upsets and big shots, broken brackets and failed parlays. But what stays consistent is breakout games from potential lottery picks and even guys we may have never even knew existed. As we get geared up for the men's Sweet 16, let's look back at some of the marquee performances from the round of 64 and round of 32. We'll start off with a historic performance from UConn's 6'11" senior Terrace Reed Jr. with an absurd 31 point and 27 rebound double-double against Furman. Reed Jr. was the first player in 58 years to record a 30-point, 25 rebound stat line in the NCAA tournament. My next pair of performances comes from the same game in a round of 32, Arkansas versus High Point in the guard battle between Darius Acuff Jr. and Rob Martin. When it comes to Arkansas's star freshman 6'3" guard Darius Acuff Jr., he dropped a spectacular 36 points on 50% shooting from the field and perimeter and dropping 60 cents worth of dimes as well. Acuff is a potential top 5 pick in this year's NBA draft and a certified bucket. A high IQ player that is able to be fast and physical, drive into the paint, knock down from downtown, and reads defenses to dish to the open man. On the other side of the floor for High Point is 5'10" senior Rob Martin, who also dropped a 30-piece this game along with 4 rebounds and 5 dimes. Martin is insanely quick, has little to no wasted movement in his dribble, not afraid to go strong into the basket against bigger defenders, and is unconscious from the 3. There was a lot of great performances in the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, but these are the ones that stuck out to me the most for the men. But that's it for me right now. I'll set the screen for Pat and Xavier back at the desk and roll on out of here.
Fundamental basketball from our guy Tamar Stubbs. Excellent work as always. We have another break upon us, so don't go anywhere.
Because the women are getting their shine when we come back. The Courts in Session Pulse Check Special is back soon. Welcome back to the Pulse Check edition of Courts in Session. We've waited long enough, so it's time to talk about the women's tournament.
Yeah, starting things off. The women are cooking as usual. It looks like the top teams are doing their thing again. We'll start with the top team, or the top dog, I should say. The UConn Huskies, Gino Auriemma, has them rolling again.
Pat, every tournament game they've played so far, they've won by at least 35 points. Azzi Fudd in her last game matched her career high of 34 points, and she tied the NCAA women's record for 8 3-point shots. You know who she's in company with, Pat? There's 3 people she's tied with. I can't remember the entire list, but I know the name at the top of that list is Caitlin Clark. So great company to be in with for Azzi Fudd.
Speaking of Caitlin Clark, Iowa, shocking loss to UVA this weekend. Obviously in women's basketball in the NCAA tournament, it's a lot more chalky and the high seeds win more often. Not there.
No, not there. Not for Iowa because Virginia, the 10 seed, takes them down. Virginia's won 3 games in 5 days. They were a first 4 team. They beat Arizona State, and they're the first time a 10 seed has reached the Sweet 16 since 2022, and it was Creighton for the women the last time that happened. Funny enough, they also beat Iowa in the second round to reach the Sweet 16, so Iowa fans really going through it. But moving things on now, we have to talk. We talked about UConn a little bit already.
Yeah, we did.
They did just beat up on Syracuse, and the Syracuse women's head coach was not happy. Felicia Leggett-Jack has a lot of questions about whether or not it's really fair that teams have to run into teams like UConn so early.
One of the best sound bites in the college basketball seasons this year, she said that the scheduling feels like a personal attack on her. But when you look at, their history in the tournament, their last 3 losses have come to UConn. So if you're the NCAA, let's figure that out. Let's get that all settled out. And let's go to another team in Iowa, actually, that played against Syracuse. Audi Crooks in Iowa State, despite her legit unbelievable performance.
She had 37 points, and it goes back to the point where you're saying Syracuse can beat Iowa State with Audi Crooks, one of the best female players in the nation. She drops 37, Syracuse win. They go to UConn and still get torched. I honestly can't really blame their coach for being upset. I would be very upset having to play a team like UConn ever. So basically, the women's side, they might not feel like the picks are pretty much locked. You feel like you can just take a UConn or a UCLA, but in March you can guarantee nothing.
Well, nothing. Except for some great coverage from our beat reporters, that is. This time we have Haley Smith breaking down the standout performances from the women's side. What's up, Haley?
The women have certainly shown up in the postseason with a couple teams scoring more than 100 points in a single game. There is a much bigger gap for the women versus the men when you look at the top seeds versus the lower seeds. Let's take a look at some of the players who are making big impacts for their teams. Starting off with Sarah Strong, a sophomore forward from UConn. She put up 18 points in the second round win over Syracuse, which is her average this season. Strong leads the Huskies in points, rebounds, steals, and blocks per game. Next up is Flau'jae Johnson, a senior guard from LSU. Johnson came up big for the Tigers in the second round on Sunday with 24 points, shooting almost 70% from the field and 50% from 3. She also recorded 4 rebounds and 3 assists to give LSU a second tournament win with over 100 points. My last standout player is another sophomore, Michaela Blakes, a guard from Vanderbilt. She scored 30 points in the first round against High Point, shooting about 69% from the field and 100% at the free throw line. Monday night, Vanderbilt advanced to the Sweet 16 with another excellent performance from Blakes, who scored 25 points and recorded 10 rebounds, 9 assists, and 4 steals. There is still plenty of basketball left to play, and we will keep up with these players as the tournament continues. Pat and Xavier, back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks, Haley. We'll be hearing from you again soon when we're done with our next break.
We're taking a timeout, but when we return, it's time to take a look at Pat's busted bracket, as well as the rest of ours too, I guess. But Courts in Session is back soon.
Welcome back. If you're here to find a perfect bracket, it genuinely breaks my heart to tell you all that you're not going to find it here, even despite some of my sharp picks. But in spite of our lack of perfection, our crew is ready to break down our brackets and show you what went right, or more likely for Xavier, what went wrong. So we'll start off with him.
Sure, yeah, start me off that way, Pat. So really, he's kind of right, though. In the East, my bracket really was just cooked from game 1. In the matchup between Ohio State and TCU, I had the Ohio State University, but the Horned Frogs wanted absolutely nothing to do with that. They destroyed my bracket from the very jump.
Good.
Game 1 done. So, but another big loss for me in the East really was USF. We talked about it a bit earlier, but not only did I have them winning, I had them repping the Americans, so that adds some extra sting. A tough loss there, but not the toughest because that easily goes to the Kansas Jayhawks. I had them making my Final Four, but they apparently were planning for a quick exit. In the West now, BYU and Gonzaga really just sold me, Pat. Texas has proven to be way better than people thought they were, and now for their efforts, they've been rewarded with a trip to the Sweet 16. And in the Midwest region, I don't really feel too bad about these picks here. I picked Akron for an upset, and they obviously didn't win, but I can't be too mad at that one for not panning out. However, no one, I don't think, was expecting St. Louis to put the beating on Georgia that they did. A huge win over there. Finally, one more second, Pat. Finally, I'm not done yet. In the South, I have a whole lot of head scratchers. The obvious one, obviously, is the VCU win over North Carolina. I don't think anyone was prepared to see the Rams take down the other Rams. But beyond that, I don't think anyone was prepared to see Iowa beat Florida. Florida was a natty lock for a ton of fans, and now they don't even make it past the round of 32. But that was my bracket. Of course, certainly some choices were made, but now we get to finally hear about Pat and his precious picks. P-Man, what you got?
Yeah, Xavier made some of the picks of all time. The first 2 days of the NCAA tournament were really kind to my bracket and I. I finished 27-5 in the round of 64. 0 Sweet 16 teams eliminated. Should have gone 29-3. That's neither here nor there. Yeah, true. Saturday and Sunday were very, very different stories, specifically in the West region. The biggest swing I took in my chalk-filled bracket was 7-seed Miami taking down Purdue and advancing to their third Sweet 16 in 5 years. I thought the physicality of Miami, and specifically the physicality of their guards paired with the imposing Malik Reneau inside, would just be a little bit too much for Purdue. Obviously, it was a swing and a miss. Malik Reneau was buying chicken tenders at the concession stand after the game in his full uniform. It's not a good shot. That's a bad shot. And Matt Painter has really turned the corner in 2023 in March. And on to the Zags, who out of the WCC really burned me again. Every single March, I fall in love with Gonzaga. I fall in love with Mark Few. I fall in love with their analytics. They burn me every single year. Not a shock to see this happen. Let's kick things over to Haley Smith. Let's see how her March started off.
Thanks, Pat. The rest of my bracket hasn't gone exactly as planned, so let's just zoom in on the East for today. Duke made me nervous in that first round with a close win over Siena, but got back to business as usual with a strong win over TCU. The Blue Devils have St. John's next and likely UConn if they make it to the Elite Eight. They will have a tough road to the final, where I have them placed in my bracket. St. John's started off strong with a win by more than 20 points versus Northern Iowa. The Red Storm was outscored in the second half versus Kansas, but won on a buzzer beater to keep my bracket on track. Here's where things didn't go too well for me. South Florida looked great all season, but fell very short of my expectations for the tournament. I thought for sure that the Bulls' momentum would carry them to a win over Louisville, and that could possibly get them one more win in the second round. But our American Conference winners didn't pull through. UConn and UCLA both started off the tournament in Philadelphia and had strong first-round performances. But just as I thought, UConn came out with a convincing win. Tamar, how's your bracket looking?
Haley, I'm going to focus on the Midwest region, and I'm the only one on the show that got the round of 64 exactly right. A lot of the games in this region were gimmies, like Michigan, Alabama, Texas Tech, Tennessee, Iowa State. The two games that I'm going to highlight that busted a lot of people's brackets are Georgia versus St. Louis and Kentucky versus Santa Clara. In the words of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, St. Louis laid the smackdown on Georgia, dominating the paint, scoring 66 points and having nearly 20 more assists than the Georgia Bulldogs, and they shot better from the field and perimeter. St. Louis had this game in a headlock and put Georgia to sleep. A lot of people had Santa Clara on the upset, but I couldn't lock that in. With the buzzer-beating thriller that led to overtime, the Kentucky Wildcats was able to hold off the Santa Clara Broncos. That's enough bracket flexing for me. Next week, I'll be back to break down what went right and what went wrong with my bracket.
Yeah, hopefully we have some more bracket wins in our futures. And by we and our, I mean I and me, of course. But that's all we have from our first of 3 course in session Pulse Check shows.
Our crew will be back here right here at noon on CUTV, breaking down what should be an exciting Sweet 16 and an Elite 8. Be sure to tune in to this week's episode of Owl Sports Update, where Emily Dino Terrace and Jackson Batchelor will have all of the latest on all things Temple. But until then, I'm Xavier Adams, he's Pat Dallahan, and we'll see you all next week.